So welcome back to Third Age Reforged and to another battle replay on the new version of the game. And this is one, I'm not going to be doing the battles that I got in order because this I received a little bit more recently than some of the others that I'm going to be showing, but this is a map that was made by Colonel Speaks 46, I believe, and it's the first time that I think he has made something new for the game anyway on his own, so I think this is why I'm going to be doing this one now rather than later, because I've always been a fan of showing off new stuff that people have done. Obviously cityscape style battles often tend to be where people gravitate towards when they're making their own maps, and this is no different. So this is a custom scenario as well, and the way that this one is going to work is going to be fairly interesting because you have the defenders here in the middle who are defending the actual settlement itself with something of a skeleton crew, and then you have the Numenorian attackers on either side. But it is a bit of a race against time because reinforcements for the defenders are right here, and they will be trying to essentially follow the attackers in and try and do things that way. As far as the theme of this battle goes, it is Numenor and Umbar against Mordor and their eastern underlings, and this has something of a feel of the era of AR-PHARAZON about it, especially considering that we are fighting within the desert. But we'll go through the attackers first and foremost, and we're going to be viewing the battle from the attackers' perspective, starting off with the Flame of Arnor, who is the one who sent me this battle, and a couple of others. He is going to be playing as the Numenorians. There are 3 Umbar forces and 1 Numenor, so we can say that the Flame of Arnor is the de facto leader of the attackers here. Axguard of Armenelos, the only completely new addition to Numenor from the last version of the game, giving them that armour-piercing edge in melee, will be more useful against the Orcish defenders than against the Haradrim that exist within the cityscape, certainly. But it does also give you that brutal attacking edge that this kind of unit is known for. The Numenorian cohort, of course, in terms of quality of frontline units, Numenor certainly don't lack for that, and they're going to be able to outmuscle pretty much everyone else on the battlefield today, albeit they will have to be a little bit careful. As strong as a unit like the Numenorian cohort is, they are still going to suffer under the armour piercing that Rhun and Harad can bring to the table if they get a little bit too cocksure about themselves. So a couple of units of them. We've got the Balagaya footmen with their armour upgrades as well, making them certainly very solid defensively, but appearances can be deceptive. Of course, this is the unit model for what was the old Ardenaim Shield Guard, which were a very high tier unit. These guys do not deal the same sort of damage as a high tier spear unit will. Very slow paced in terms of the amount of damage that they can deal, but they can certainly take a great deal of damage as well. We have the Trebuchet of Numenor, who is already going to start to fire on the advancing Easterlings, and obviously the crew itself as well with those Warhammers, a unit that they share with a couple of their, well, again, I guess they're not ancestors, but forebears, I guess. We've got the Numenorian Shield Guard here as well, good solid defensive unit of spears, as well as being very effective in melee. All of the things I said about the Balagaya footmen not being quite so good when it comes to dealing damage among spears, the Numenorian Shield Guards certainly are one of the better units for that sort of thing, ready to stop the Easterling advance. Numenorian steel bows, limited ammunition, but they're one of the few examples of a regular archer, in quotation marks, that have access to armour-piercing missiles, so if you use them well, they can be very, very useful, and also they're not half bad in melee either, but there is a bit of jeopardy when you use them. You have to use them well, otherwise they can be quite difficult to make pay for themselves. A couple of units of the upgraded Balagaya archers as well, very good in a skirmish fight, and then the Seafarers of Nindamos, which offer you that close range punch with those javelins, a very good unit this to help really support your position. The Naran Sentinels back there, and then both the bodyguard units are here as well, the Royal Legion of Armenelos, the sword and board unit, and then back here we've got 2 units actually of the Pharazim Swordmasters, who are a very dangerous unit of heavy swordsmen indeed, very strong with those 2-handed blades. Then over here the Umbar army, commanded by Ankles, is going to be helping the Numenorians, and I think they're probably going to be taking the lead, honestly, in terms of advancing into the settlement itself. They too share the Balagaya footmen with Numenor, albeit with their burgundy colour accents rather than the deep blue, and the same with the Balagaya archers as well. We've got some of the Umbar Axguard as well. When you compare generally most of the regular units of Umbar to the equivalents from Numenor, obviously the blood has diluted a little bit in the time of Umbar, so they're not going to have quite the same quality, but they can certainly bring numbers, certainly in their newfound form as well. Obviously a fairly numerous unit of Umbar Axguard here, a couple of units of them, with the armour upgrades again, that armour piercing will be more useful against the Orcish defenders than their fellow men. We've got the Belagai footmen here as well. Alcarondas Legion, which are very similar in many ways to the Numenorian cohort as well. Always been a big fan of their look, with the slight Gondorian hints about them as well. We've got the standard Belagai pikemen with their armour upgrades as well, so leaning heavily on the more defensively minded Belagai units. Several units of these footmen as well, so loads of these spears, a few Corsairs as well, just to help pad the numbers out, but obviously in terms of quality they're not exactly going to be absolutely sensational. Over on the other side, two forces of Umbar. We have Killeen, who has got the Alcarondas Legion. We have the Harbingers of Castamere here as well, who again are kind of like a slightly worse version of the Pharazon Swordmasters that we saw on the other side. We've got the Alcarondas Legion here, got more of the Umbar Axe Guard, plenty of the Umbar Axe Guard as well. Corsair Blackguards, which again, very, very similar to the Seafarers of Nien Damos, only they have a curved blade in melee rather than an axe. So you can see the similarities between Umbar and Numenor are many. Umbar just going for a slightly more numbers-heavy approach, and Numenor going full-on for quality. A couple of units of the Aru Royal Guard, one of the very best heavy archers in the game when it comes to trading back and forth with enemy archers. I don't know how important that's going to be. These makeshift fortifications that the attackers have set up to almost act as a defensive bulwark themselves against the forces that are arrayed against them. And you can see there are some dead Mumakil over here, but some very much alive ones on the horizon. We'll talk about them in a moment. Killeen will have to be braced for them. And then over here, still the fortifications, keeping safe for now the army of Johnny. A couple of units of Balagai archers, pikemen here as well, footmen, axe guard, very similar look to this army as well. A couple of units of those axe guard, more Balagai pikemen. Some cavalry as well though. The warlords of Umbar will be able to sally out and try and do some damage to the approaching forces of Khand over there. And we've got some Harbingers, maybe a little bit more quality in this army, especially when you consider the Naru Sentinels already in that V-shaped formation. And there's another bridge over here, so there are a few angles that the attackers can be hit by the reinforcements, but thanks to these makeshift fortifications they can constrict the battle a little bit and maybe try and take the settlement and then make themselves the defenders of the cityscape itself. We shall see if that proves to be the case. As far as the at least at the moment the defenders go, we have Ricky Beagle over here playing as Harad. We've got the Serpent Guard. I don't know how effective they're going to be if they can't really get in and around these fortifications, but one thing that Harad certainly do bring in abundance is armour piercing, which, considering the reliance on the Balagai units, particularly from Umbar, all of this armour piercing is going to be very useful against them, because it's one of the main ways in which they keep themselves alive and are so effective at what they do. Stuff like the Trollman are going to be very good against them. Obviously they've always been the heart and soul of Harad, really, and when you consider that the champions of Nafarat are here, the monstrous men of the deep desert fighting very much on home turf, it would seem. Champions of Nafarat, and then more of the Trollmen just in behind. We have the Muhad Beastmasters as well. Could be useful for dealing with those warlords if they sally out over here, but for the most part just a little bit of mobility, and of course those javelins that they throw, yet more of an armour-piercing punch against those armoured units they're going to be facing off against. Haradrim Spearmen just to pad out the numbers, but of course they're going to really struggle if they get isolated in 1v1 engagements. A few units of them. More Trollmen. I mean, there's loads of Trollmen here. This is a pretty scary army for Ricky Beagle. It's maybe a little bit lightweight in terms of armour, but if they can really be aggressive and use all of this armour-piercing damage to good effect, it'll really pile the pressure on the attackers as they try to move into the settlement. And then, of course, the intimidating sight that is the Mumakil. Utilising them at the right moment could be the difference between victory and defeat. Over here we have Caden of the two captains playing as Khand. Khand as well have got some pretty decent and varied options. Some armour upgraded Variag warriors will do decently for the kind of unit that they are, although they do lack that armour piercing that would maybe make them a little bit more of a scary unit. But of course armour piercing is not something Khand lack. Nurad footmen will find themselves in a pretty good position if they have to face off against the standard Umbar units. The more quality heavy units though, that might be where they fall down a little bit. Those big rectangular wicker shields as well, good for warding off arrow fire. Nurad halberds, I mean, one thing, there are some Naru Sentinels, but phalanx units across the board. It's going to be interesting to see who gets the better of that engagement. The Nurad halberds, simplistic in what they offer, but armor-piercing phalanxes can be very, very useful, especially against the kind of opposition that Khand are facing here. More Norad footmen, we've got nomadic axemen as well, so a standard unit of shock infantry. We've also got the Brotherhood of the Spear, very good defensively, massive shield value on them as well. We've got the Norad Storm Guard, who are a really devastating unit if they can get situated in a fight. We have the Hwacha with the rather interesting artillery crew now, large falxes that they wield. Interesting to see there's not a huge amount of cavalry. Nomadic marauders with some javelins, so the warlords of Umbar might have the opportunity to go about their business as they please. I think Caden of the two captains is the only defending / maybe later attacking army that's got the entirety of his force outside of the settlement's walls. So that's why we can see another wing of the army here. More Norads, more nomadic axemen. We've got the blood trolls of Khand, which act very much as the same as the other trolls from the Orcish factions. Very scary. They will need to be careful of the quality that all of the attacking armies do have, but if they get used at the right time, the damage spike that they have is very, very good. More Variag warriors, some Variag bowmen as well, so some more standard units there. And then moving across over to here, Remy playing as Rhun. He's going to be advancing immediately on the attackers over here. Flagrim. I mean, it's an unenviable task to try and attack into Numenor when they have a position behind those palisades and on a hill with all of their quality, but Rhun, if they lean on their armour piercing, and if they do manage to use superior numbers, they could make Numenor start to sweat a little bit. And plenty of the Flagrim here, so it'll be interesting to see how well they can do against the quality that Numenor have at their disposal. Got a unit of Scion Rim over here as well, right on the red line of the map here, but more of a defensive unit, but they will be able to withstand the damage that Numenor kick out maybe a little bit better. The Gamp Rim, they're going to be very key. They're going to need to get situated and hope that they don't get hit by too many missiles or artillery shells, because they're going to be needed to try and equalise that quality gap and utilise that armour-piercing damage once again. Got some Nar Rim over here, again firing uphill, but very much in range. It's going to be trying to situate them in and around those gaps in the walls that they've been erected quickly. We've got the Scion Rim, we've also got the Dragon's Breath. I mean, the Dragon's Breath cannon, most of the time we've seen it recently has been very devastating, but most of the time we have seen it, Rhun have been on the defence more directly than this. Here they're going to have to be a little bit more aggressive. I don't know whether or not they're going to be able to push the artillery into position quickly enough. And then you have the Resplendent Carmel's Chosen. Now, into the settlement itself, we have Colonel Speaks himself, who is playing as Mordor. The entirety of the Mordor force, I believe, is within the settlement. So we have the Blackguard of Barad-dûr and the Uruk Halberds. Obviously, we saw Great Shield Infantry used well on the defence last time at Dol Guldur. We'll see if that will be the case this time as well. The Javelins, obviously cheap and cheerful, not so important in a custom scenario because the armies are chosen for you. But those javelins, they need to be put into a good position, and the armor-piercing damage needs to rain down. Morgul chosen in here. Troll drummers will keep the orcs pointing in the right direction just that little bit longer, which might be the difference between victory and defeat. The Uruk archers are here also. We've got some orc javelins here. Again, some of the tribal abodes. Yeah, the Trollmen of Harad, so Ricky Beagle does have a portion of his army in here, including the very scary demons of the desert. If they get situated in a good position, it could be very painful for the attackers as they try to move through and take the settlement. A lot of open room in the settlement itself though, so the outer choke points are going to be really key in terms of trying to hold on to this position, especially with the limited numbers that are in here from the off. Rajam archers and serpent archers offering a little bit of support as well, and then the rest of the Mordor army. So Rhun's entire army is outside, as well as Khan's Harad offering Mordor a little bit of support here in and around this citadel. We've got the Uruk Halberds, Morgul chosen, obviously the Olag Kai as well, very, very scary, probably the best unit in class outside of maybe the Entwives for the Elven factions and for the Hobbits. Temple Guard for some more armour piercing, and the Uruk Halberds as well. So this is going to be an interesting one to see how it pans out really. It's not the longest battle in the world, so it's going to be fairly fast paced. I think a large part of that is due to the fact that the action is going to start pretty much immediately, right from the off here, and I think it's going to be Rhun and Numenor that get things underway. So let's see how this goes, shall we? Honestly, in a situation like this, I can actually see the trebuchet being a little bit more useful out here in more open terrain anyway, so I'll probably dump all the ammo fairly fast. Because in a cityscape like this, it can be quite difficult to position your artillery such, unless you can get a very fortuitous angle within some of the narrow choke points to actually utilise them effectively, and especially seeing as Rhun really are set up over here to be hit right from the off. And some of these Gamprim already taking some hits there, but Rhun wasting not an awful lot of time in getting involved in combat, although the Flagrim are now right in front of the Trebuchet crew, and they still have the steel bows and other assorted archers to utilise as well. But the Flagrim should do decently against a lot of these Numenorian troops. 1-to-1, they are not as high a quality, but that armour piercing and their numbers do combine to make them a fairly efficient melee combatant against them, but they will struggle if they continue to take point blank hits at the hands of that Trebuchet. Rhun have got decent troops when it comes to morale, but they won't survive under these sort of attentions if they are continuous. And the Javelins also now starting to rein in. I mean, in terms of melee troops, Rhun certainly have a few more, so they can sustain this attack for maybe a little bit longer than would be comfortable for Numenor, but only if things go their way. Meanwhile, over on the other side of the settlement, Cand moving in, and the Hwacha immediately starting to put some pressure on the Umbar troops that are arrayed at the foot of the settlement's walls. And again, when they are positioned as they are, this is a good opportunity for the other team's artillery to also do a good amount of damage. It won't do the burst damage that the Trebuchet is doing on the other side, but it will put Umbar under a good amount of pressure here, trying to get as close to the walls as they can to give themselves some cover. Balagai pikemen, the ones feeling the brunt of the Candish rockets. The Haradrim now also moving forward. Again, some of that Trebuchet artillery, not as fertile grounds for the artillery over on this side. And that is a ability, a general ability, which we only ever see in custom scenarios, not in general battles. Haradrim spearmen moving in, but there's no way that they're going to be getting through fully upgraded Balagai footmen in a hurry. We'll need the assistance of the trollmen to do that, and that does change matters somewhat. Fire arrows going after the Mumakil. You can make them run amok with fire arrows, but it is difficult to pull off quickly. Meanwhile, Umbar moving over here to give their Numenorian allies a little bit of support, plenty of these axes as well, so Rhun certainly don't have a monopoly on armour piercing over here. And that golden scale armour is not going to be as effective as Rhun, I'm sure, would like. Meanwhile, I mean, over there, see the dark storm clouds on the horizon in the deserts, but a bit of friendly fire there, which you don't want too much of, as Numenor and Umbar over on this side. Numenor front-loading their defence. Again, that's another general ability that we heard in the background. Unfortunately, as the observer, we don't actually know which army is firing their abilities at what time. You can try to, based on the announcers sometimes. The Orcish ones tend to be quite obvious, but when it's all human factions on the field bar one, it is a little bit more tricky to tell them apart. I mean, Rhun probably would be wanting to use their general abilities, so it may very well have been them just to keep them marching forwards. Numenorian steel bows firing at point blank. It's been a very torrid time for Rhun, but that's not to be unexpected given the situation. Umbar, meanwhile, are putting pressure on the settlement as well, so they're the first ones really to try and take the centre with any sort of meaningful push. It looks like it's happening on the other side as well, but this means that Mordor are going to be very much involved in proceedings as well. They won't be too concerned about the Corsairs, especially not with all of their heavier troops around. And there's also now defending javelins being put to good use, Orc javelins. This is a situation when you're on the defence where actually having higher quality javelins can be better for you, because you're going to do more damage per hit and you're a little bit safer. But there's still no doubting the efficiency of a unit like that. Temple Guard up on the walls as well. I don't think Mordor are going to be getting any support from Rhun anytime soon over on this side of the field, so they will need to hold out indefinitely, I think. Meanwhile, over here, I was wondering why the frame rate was suffering a little bit, and it's because Umbar are doing their level best to try and force their way through the Mordor defence over here, which is bold considering that they do have Morgul chosen. I'm pretty sure there are more Blackguard over here as well. Trollmen are in close proximity, and this is a very narrow choke point indeed. So it's tough ground for Umbar to try and get through. I'm surprised they're being so forthright about going through here. Temple Guard right there as well, and Uruk Archers, so they're taking all kinds of range damage as they do this. Similar to the situation that Rhun find themselves in on the other side, perhaps. Meanwhile, Warlords of Umbar charging out. I mean, one problem that Umbar may run into over here is the fact that if they're being that aggressive and taking that many losses and trying to force their way into the settlement, they're going to be a little bit undermanned when it comes to dealing with the reinforcements out here. So in sharp contrast to what is likely to happen on the other side, we are probably going to see the defenders receive some relief over here if Khand are able to keep their units marching. Johnny's forces over here. I mean, Harad's full army is not outside of the walls. Some of them are within, so it's not a given that they're going to be able to make their way through here. But as we said in the composition phase, there is a lot of trollmen from the deep desert that are part of the relief force over here, which is not ideal for the kind of units that Umbar have got at their disposal. Very good defensively, but only if they can really rely on that armour, and that is not what you can do when the trollmen are here in such numbers. But other than the trollmen, there's not a huge amount else that's scary. The Mumakil can be, but only when the time is right. Well, look at their pikemen over here, meanwhile, flitting back across the other side. I mean, to be fair, considering the rancid situation they found themselves in, Rhun have actually held up reasonably well to still be a factor in this battle. And it's getting to the point now where I think, looking at the situation as a whole, Numenor and Umbar need to deal with Rhun quickly so they can focus entirely on trying to break their way into the settlement, because if they don't, then it will turn into a 2 choke point fight with the defenders almost assured of reinforcements from some areas, which would make life very difficult for the attackers. We're in shield guard. Yeah, I feel like we're doing decently enough over here. Trebuchet has already been a massive factor in the fight over here. I haven't really seen the Dragon's Breath, but that's not terribly surprising. It's a difficult situation for Rhun to try and use their artillery. Probably the first time in a while we've seen the Dragon's Breath be next to useless. Ignoring cohort moving forwards. Artillery crew themselves trying to get involved. Dragon's Wrath crossbowman firing at point blank, so Numenor trying to close the gap on all of these skirmishers to try and prevent those dangerous missiles from striking their targets. Umbar Axe Guard. In fact, Umbar have got a few units over here. Would they be better off? I mean, some of the Numenor units are now making their way over to try and force their way into the settlement, and they do have a lot more room to play with over on this side. Much of Ankles' Umbar army has been deployed to try and get through this, not skeleton crew of Mordor, but certainly a very beatable opposition over on this side. From a defending point of view as well, you need to try and keep the attackers bound up here for as long as possible, because things are looking good on the other side, but not so good that you can afford to crumble over here. Sauron's will making their way forward. I mean, plenty of numbers here from Mordor. Not terribly surprising, of course, all javelins and assorted Uruks. The Runic General falls. Not surprising to see the Lurker Khan be the first one to die off. Still more javelins being used as well. Meanwhile, this choke point over here, still trying to use sheer mass. I mean, there's not a limitless amount of infantry over here for the defenders, but what is here is pretty good. I mean, lots of armour piercing in the Trollman and the Uruk chieftains, but also the quality of the executioners. The Nazgul are in here. The problem with trying to mass push through Mordor when they have access to the Blackguard and Trolls, it's not really going to work. Again, mass pushing is definitely more in the Orcs' wheelhouse. Umbar can do it, but maybe not in a situation where the choke point is so narrow and you're going up against a force that has all the answers to that sort of thing, really. Writing the playbook in that regard. Mordor, maybe Angmar, the only ones that do things better in that regard than they do. Meanwhile, over here, another ability being utilised. I mean, I have to say, actually, Umbar, considering the fact that they have sent a few more units to try and batter their way into the settlement, they've done a pretty good job at holding Khand back, really. Having a look elsewhere, I mean, there's a lot of units being held in reserve from a Khandish perspective, and if I were them, I would not be doing that. I would be trying to move forward with everything, try and put some real pressure on Umbar over on this side, especially seeing as all of their strength is over here, which is not true perhaps of Harad. And time is not slipping away from them, but the longer that they leave it, the longer that they allow Umbar to remain competitive over on this side, the better it should be for the attackers. Plenty of those halberds. Still the small matter of those Mumakil hovering on the horizon, cavalry as well, which we've seen flitting around a little bit from Umbar and the warlords, but this is the kind of battle where cavalry tends to have a very narrow window of opportunity to be super useful, especially lancers. Rumakil maybe can be used a little bit more as a battering ram through choke points, but that's unlikely to be necessary for Harad over here. More likely to be needing reinforcements for defensive positions later on. Trollman, there's also the Champions of Neferat in there as well. Very scary unit indeed. The Balagai pikemen, to their credit, have managed to hold Harad at arm's length better than they would have done had they not had those long weapons. Still a small matter of those Moonlight Beast Hunts as well, which have clearly taken their toll also. And these makeshift fortifications have definitely done their work. Our Royal Guard as well, just within the settlement as a whole. Still the Olakai, the scary force that they are now. There's a lot of good quality Umbar infantry over here, so it's not the easiest foes to deal with, but I mean, this is very much a kill box kind of situation, surrounded on all sides by various skirmishers. It was the Temple Guard which would have given Umbar the most pause. Really going to be able to force the issue over here in the way that they would like. Looping their shots. Corsairs. There's the Uruk chieftains just in behind as well, which can be added. Bolster things a little bit more. So will the attackers manage to force their way through over here? So far, Mordor's lines remain pretty cohesive. Tron Drummers still keeping all of the orcs fighting. Sauron's will also have that, but you can see now we're arriving just in time to see an overload start to take place. Only from Balagai are archers, but Mordor don't really have any reinforcements close by, and there's Pharazim swordmasters in and amongst this position. So I don't think Mordor are going to be able to cling on for too much longer. Having said that, Rhun still alive out here, fighting the good fight. I mean, more and more I think Numenor have been siphoning off resources to try and get into the settlement, which is probably why the pace at which the men in gold started to fall, started to drop. Doing a good job here, and actually looking like they could win in some minor engagements. And overall, actually, Rhun have survived to the point where they were maybe left in too good a condition by the attackers, and now if they can continue to be a thorn in their side, that's all they really need to be in order to be super useful for their team. As we mentioned, I think it is over here where more pressure is on the attackers to make some progress, and warlords which have actually come across from the other side of the battlefield to try and expedite Rhun's defeat. Right the way around the outside. Now, have we over here? Can there be a reversal of fortunes over here as well? I wouldn't have thought so. I think the trolls will start to fall away now. Still a few harbingers in there, still good quality infantry, but they'll do a lot of damage beforehand, and there's other problems that Umbar have to deal with after that anyway. Units being taken back outside. It's an attempt. This is a narrow choke that these fortifications have created.
Only half our force remains. Our allies dead. Without their general, they may lose.
That is an Umbar general right in the middle of all of those units, falling away. Again, not terribly surprising. So they're starting to crest the hill now. This could be the moment where Khand really announce their presence on the field and put the pressure on. And again, still a decent pike line, including Naru Sentinels. I mean, one of the sturdier units of pikes the game has to offer. But surely can have got the mass to be able to push their way through here, you would have thought, if they're willing to commit a lot of their units all at once. Starting to make their way in now. And it's been a strange kind of battle in terms of the momentum. I think neither side has really claimed it in a way that you would consider to be really comprehensive, albeit I think the defenders of the settlement, Mordor and their allies, will be the happier of the two teams going into what will be the next phase of proceedings following the defeat of Rhun. Surely this is where the attackers can start to make their presence felt. They can start to claim more bits of the settlement. If they can claim the settlement as a whole and use that choke point over on the other side to their advantage, that could be the way that they go on to win this. Balagaya pikemen to continue the surround. Numenorian cohorts, Balagaya footmen, Sauron's will now completely surrounded. They and the Temple Guard, the only forces of Mordor left defending this entrance to the settlement. What do you do in this situation if you're Mordor? And the few Haradrim units that were over here as well. Because you can't salvage this situation anymore. By the time you get over here, your units will be vanquished, and you will be facing a more organised force from the opposition. Interesting questions to ask. Meanwhile, they finally managed to silence Rhun outside the walls. It looks as though they are in the process of finalising their victory out here. But Rhun, I think, will be reasonably happy with the fact that they've lasted this long under these conditions. Just trying to make sure that all of these reinforcements can't get inside the settlement as quickly as they would like. And then over here on this side, and to be fair, pressure is starting to be ratcheted up. I think the Haradrim and the Coundish forces outside the fortress now need to get a bit of a shimmy on. Otherwise, the situation could start to run away from them. Trollman joining the fray. Some Uruk Arch as well, the Olag-hai still there. But Umbar have got decent enough numbers over here, so the pressure is still on. Whether or not the damage that has been done to them throughout the battle as a whole is going to prove to be too much, we'll have to wait and see. Still a few units, I mean the Demons of the Desert, still looming. Not a force that they would want to be seeing, I'm sure. Canned forcing their way through now to try and perhaps get some surrounds on the Umbar forces that are over there. The player has admitted defeat, that will surely be the runic one. Umbar still with forces out here, Canned sort of the blunt opposite of what they were doing previously. They're now trying to force path their way through to get into the settlement and help their Mordor overlords defend it. You can see in the distance there as well the Mumakil starting to move through, so as if they heard me, the players outside here are now starting to up the pace a little bit. And the Mumakil have managed to traipse their way through here, but there are still Umbar defenders getting in the way of all of the Haradrim infantry that still haven't made their way through. So crossbowmen you can see now moving through the Mumakil corpses. I'm surprised they didn't pressurise this choke point a little bit sooner, to be honest, but better late than never. The Rangers and the Blackguards having to face down yet another unit of patrolmen. Reinforcements close by as well. What are the Mumakil going to do now? I mean, Corsair crossbows are firing at them pretty much at point blank. The same can be said of the Mumakil, but you really do need to be keeping these guys moving in order for them to be at their most efficient. Those bolts will start to shred away at those substantial hit points that the Mumakil have. Meanwhile, Canned managing to get through over here. The Blood Trolls now moving in, so as soon as the Olag-hai, I mean there are still a couple of them left alive, but as soon as they're pretty much on their knees, these Umbaran have to face down a similar kind of unit. However, time is of the essence for the defenders now. They need to try and handle business over here as quickly as they can, because The longer that this goes on, Numenor are already on their way across. Still a few units of Mordor getting in the way. Again, it's not disrupting the rhythm of the reinforcements from Numenor and Umbar over on this side is the best that the defenders have been able to do. But that's only buying time, and unless that time is put to good use, it's not going to result in the best outcomes. The trebuchet being pushed around, I don't know if that's still got ammunition. Very key unit earlier on in proceedings. Serpent archers moving forwards. Umbar and Numenor start to surround. I mean, one thing they cannot do is get caught on the other side of this choke point, like I said. If they do, they have become the de facto attackers. And a faction with Numenor's qualities can hold narrow defensive positions for a fairly long time. Serpent archers pretty good in a back and forth fight like this, but you can see here already what Numenor's ploy is. Going to get themselves dug into a defensive position right at the summit and try and deal with these Uruk chieftains. Uruk chieftains against the Al-Kharandas Legion. The armor piercing should see them over the line, but this is only one unit. Bodyguard or no, trying to deal with them atop this hill. There's one tree. Sauron, a big fan of these trees. One on the side of the cliff as well. Starting to look a little bit dodgy for the defenders now. Can continuing to move in. Ariag Bowman pushing their way through. Have they actually dealt with Umbar out here though, or are they leaving Umbar alive? I mean, they're going to leave Umbar alive. It's very weird to have taken their time to this extent and then this was the purpose behind it all. Victory seems certain. Not sure I would have been so confident in that assessment, but Harad have now made their way through here. The skeleton crew that Umbar left behind smashed to splinters. A bit of support from Khand actually as well, so again, showing that haste was necessary because they do need to start getting into the settlement, and that will be where the battle is won or lost against primarily Numenor, you'd have to say. AR-PHARAZON and his boys managed to bring all of these Southlanders to heel. Stormguard are a worrying kind of unit to still have alive here in the late game, rather than the spear moving in the vanguard. Very little remains of Mordor over here. Uruk archers. Numenorian steel bows surrounding their enemy over here as well. And the sign that Numenorians are arriving. Just a few units, Corsairs, Belagair archers, so they are securing the settlement pretty much. It is going to turn from attack to defence for all of these guys. Again, both teams have had to do their fair share of both in this battle already. But here in the final phases it will become a very simple equation. Serpent Archer is pretty much the only unit of any sort of health still fighting, and that will surely not be the case for much longer. So a few arrows and projectiles whizzing around. I mean, the problem that the the attackers of Khand and Harad are going to have is that these defensive positions that Numenor and Umbar now occupy are going to be pretty damn difficult to overcome. Belagair units. The armour upgrades have served them well so far. The Blood Trolls trying to force their way forwards. And trying now, how the tables turn, trying to force their way through with mass this time. Although the fact they do have the Blood Trolls is going to be helpful. Khandish armour piercing as well will be necessary against that Numenorian plate. And further back, Ariad warriors, so armour upgrades. every bit of that defence and numbers to be able to claim victory here. Numenor starting to fall away, which is a bit of a shame because they would have been pretty well served in smashing their way through that choke point, but they've been kind of wasted on Balagire archers. It is these individual judgment calls which may come back to haunt them yet. Naru Sentinels. Limited in number. Again, just disrupting the rhythm. Ariag warriors. Maybe a little bit more communication needed between the players over here now. After all, their team's entire hopes now rest with Harad and Candle. There are still the Nazgul in there, 6 of them remain. This is the kind of engagement that they can be a real menace in. And the Stormguard are here as well. A fairly ideal unit for the situation as long as they don't get bogged down against pikes, and as if on cue, the unit of Umbar pikes are arriving. The Trebuchet is getting in the way as well. I mean, I'm sure the defenders, the initial defenders, would have been very happy when they saw this choke point on the field, considering the situation over here, but now it's being used against them in exactly the same way, pretty much. I wonder what happened to the demons of the desert that were in here. I don't know whether they managed to slip away or what, but I think they probably were hunted down. Is there still the Uruk chieftains at the top of the hill? Indeed there is. Fighting well also, managing to deal with the Alcarondas Legion first and foremost, so still holding on to the summit. It's not the sort of unit that you can afford to completely let go either. Mordor and Umbar have managed to pretty much secure everything else within the settlement, but the very peak yet to be so. Send units back up. I mean, pikes will do it, albeit slowly. There are some sword masters as well, good quality, but maybe they would be better served trying to hold the front over here. Keep Can and Harad bottled up in this defensive position. Still not the easiest one to call this, because it's a situation where if someone's got really heavy hitting units still in reserve, if they use them at the right time,
The enemy are badly bloodied.
that could be enough to make all the difference in the world. Champions of Neferat raising their swords aloft. Decent amount of Haradrim and Candish forces still out here. And they will be able to finish off the Umbar troops that are here, but keeping the now attackers split is definitely in their interests. Our beast hunters trying to force their way through, but one thing they don't want to happen is a mass rout. Champions of Neferat in there, Stormguard are in there. We already know that the Nazgul are there.
Slain by the enemy. We must help
There goes an Umbar general, the one outside the walls. That I think was the Mordor. Yes, it was. The Mordor one causing a little bit of infighting, which doesn't actually do any damage, I don't think, but it does stop your units from actually taking any actions momentarily, which can be enough for the opposition to claim a little bit of ground, and every inch of ground here is going to be important for Cand as they try to force back control of the settlement. Will the higher quality, heavier units of the Numenorians be enough here? Or will it be the numbers and armour piercing still possessed by the forces of evil? Rondas Legion back up here now, going to try and finally finish off the Uruk chieftains. And it'll also stop them from using that general ability if they still have one charge of it left. But also it'll just mean that they have full control over the settlement, and it really does just come down to that one choke point. They can then send all of their units down there to try and hold on to it. Surely in terms of numbers, and also the fact that pikes are up here, will mean that the Uruk chieftains will eventually be defeated, but again, it's how much time they can buy. The Numenorians would much prefer they can consolidate all of their units into this one defensive position. Belagair archers firing into this blob.
The enemy general lies dead.
The Haradrim general finally falls, although I don't think... Well, I mean, the Harad force is outside. If it's mostly trollmen they've got left, though, it's not going to be the most important thing, but any Haradrim spearmen will rout a little bit more quickly as a result. Harbingers of Castamere. Still a few of them left. A couple of units of them, in fact. All of the Umbar army still having something left to give. Firing a few missiles into the back of that force, as many kills as they can get will be key here. Still plenty of reinforcements, though to be fair, actually a lot of the Haradrim forces out here are very basic, so the loss of that general might prove to be very important, less so for the champions, as it looks like they are finally dealing with what's left of the Umbar units outside of the walls. We are hurtling towards that very simplistic one-on-one confrontation in the very narrow gap at the end of this fight. Who's managed to set that battle up best is going to go on to win this, most certainly.
Without their general, they may lose heart and flee.
That, I believe, was one of the Umbar generals. Our archers still would have preferred a unit with slightly more damage at their disposal to be in this situation this late on, but it's certainly better than nothing. And firing into the backs of what they can see as well. Even the Nurad footmen with those big shields of theirs, they won't be coming into effect when they're facing the wrong way. Every kill they get is going to be very important. Later on as well, they will need to do their bit in melee, I'm sure. With these units, Numenor shield guard on their way back over. Steel bowmen as well. This trebuchet that the attackers pushed into place is actually helping the Numenorians now, I think. They were trying to mass push their way through, which is fair enough, but what they've done now is narrowed the battlefield even more. And at this point what they want to be doing is pushing through with their mass, having that momentum and managing to cause gaps, but that artillery piece is making life a little bit more difficult for them. Belagair archers heading up here to presumably try and... these Uruk chieftains have done a fantastic job, and it does go to show what a difference armour piercing can make, because all of these Umbar units are not bad in terms of quality. Certainly the Alcarondas Legion are decent, the pikes going to make life hard, but the armour piercing, the second hit point, fairly basic as far as a bodyguard unit goes in the grand scheme of things, but performing very, very well here, which is probably why they're sending up 34 more men to try and deal with him. More. Still a few of these skirmishers that are out of ammo. I don't really know why the Pharazim Swordmasters are up here, to be honest. 46? 46 of them? They need to be in combat somewhere. That might be a critical error made there by Numenor. You don't need to safeguard your trebuchet with a unit of Swordmasters when there's no way for the enemy to reach them. It's fine if they were initially killing off what was left of the Serpent Archers, but to then go up there, that's a weird choice. Unless I'm missing something obvious, but I don't think I was. Balance of forces evenly matched. Harbingers being siphoned off, but the Trollmen are breaking through. I mean, they're siphoning off more units to try and take the top of the hill, but I don't know, I think it's looking more like Mordor and their allies are in the ascendancy here. There's going to be no reinforcements coming from outside from that Umbar force. They've been largely defeated. Belagair archers and Pharazim Swordmasters arriving now, Harbingers turning back around as well. So these are units which will do well against the Trollmen, but the ground that they've already made up might prove to be the more important thing here. Champions of Nafrat remaining.
Our general lies slain upon the battlefield.
Oh, there goes our AR-PHARAZON himself. A simple Variag warrior taking him down. Basic Harad Spearman as well, just sheer numbers now being thrown in. As we mentioned, it's kind of an all or nothing engagement now for both sides.
The enemy are badly bloodied. They have lost half their men.
More reinforcements, 60 champions of Neferat still in reserve. It's the kind of heavy hitter that is going to make life difficult, you'd have thought. Victory seems certain. Still for the Uruk chieftains up here, defended the statue of their overlord resolutely. Shaper would probably be better off just dropping their artillery piece now and trying to make something happen. I mean, they're trying to move units up to the hilltop now, but that would only work if they had secured it earlier as a final stand, and they didn't. So again, it's just those small little moments of decision making here which have probably let the Numenorian side down. Both sides have... I would say that both sides have been a little bit lethargic in the way that they've tried to make their moves. Canned earlier on, guilty of that. Harad maybe as well. Rhun not so much, but Rhun were placed in a very difficult situation right from the off. Mordor didn't really have any decisions to make, they just had to try and hold on to the settlement as best they could. But then the Numenorians... Again, it's been one of those battles where the momentum has really shifted almost passively. Maybe not so much now with all of the, all of these units sort of charging through and really trying to assert themselves late on. But still, Numenorian cohort. Only 9 of them though, and with all of this, I think we can pretty much safely say that the initial defenders are probably going to be the ones to go on to win this one. Lancers still here as well, Serpent Guard forcing their way through now. We have Beastmasters as well, all these mounted units. I mean, only really getting involved when the battle is at its end, but cavalry sweeping through the settlement is always a good sign if you're able to do so freely at this late stage. Storm Guard were always a big unit to have this late on as well, the longer weaponry, the armour piercing in that sort of fight. Mordor and Rhun. Mordor, actually, the Uruk chieftains may very well live to the end here, but it's going to be mostly the men of the Far East and the men of the South which remain. Pharazon Swordmasters, again, this is probably the sort of unit that rather than going up onto that wall over there for no reason, probably should have been committed over here far sooner, and that would have made the difference here. With all of the numbers that were already here, the Uruk chieftains would have been wiped away far earlier in this battle than they have turned out to be. Again, less of a thorn in the side and more of a stake in the side they have proved to be, because it meant there was no real option to retreat to an already secured final stand for the Numenorian side. Cavalry unit, still that one unit of Belagai footmen, 94 remaining. Clean up duty now, which could be easier said than done when you've got units like Harbingers of Castamere still fighting in this brawl. Bowman trudging through as well.
Good tidings. The enemy general
Candace General falls, taken down by one of the Axe Guard of Armenelos. But that will be a Pyrrhic victory indeed. Those spears may very well end up being the last ones left, actually. Irish Sentinels trying to form up some sort of rear guard. They may actually finally secure this final stand, but it won't be with anywhere near enough units to actually make a fist of winning the battle from here. Victory. The Storm Guard have been excellent in the late game. Serpent Guard managing to smash into the back of those Belagai footmen, so making contribution here late on. And that's pretty much it for these units here. A few Numenorians still live. Pathfinding of those Variag warriors seems to have gone a bit haywire, but there you go. Now the onslaught will begin. Very few Narinaru sentinels that will not hold back these forces for long. Ashari as well. Assassin class unit. They don't have their dancing swords anymore. Very weird visual glitch that was. And a difficult kind of unit to use. Oh, that was a Nazgul, wasn't it? 5 of them still live. Only 1 more of them died in that choke point fight. Again, it's a sign that when you put units around them, they really are very, very difficult to root out. So they will live. Which I think that may very well be Mordor's only surviving unit when all is said and done. Pharazon Swordmasters finally did, and when they arrived, the Uruk chieftains did collapse pretty quickly. Says all you need to know, really. The units start to pour uphill. No, the Uruk chieftains are still alive. Pharazon Swordmasters should finish them off though. Unless the Hashari can really hotfoot it. This will be the last engagement. Will they rout? Or will it be an admission of defeat? Because I don't know if... yeah, an admission of defeat. Not from the Flame of Arnor though. Not yet anyway. I don't think they would be killed off that quickly. The Mordor General has lived as well. So yeah, an impressive performance from the Uruk chieftains. They would have gone on to lose this fight. Oh, just as soon as I say that, all General falls. Well, there we go. And that is it. Wait a minute. Oh, I see. Okay. So the victory condition was the Mordor General living or dying? In which case, the decision for the Numenorians to not go straight for the throat when they were in here in the first place is even weirder. Interesting. Look at all of these names as well. They're actually appropriate, although I think Gimilcard is probably more appropriate as a Numenorian name. Anyway, less of that. Sauron himself. I don't think that was Sauron himself, but still, I suppose that means that the Numenorians have won. Well, I mean, all of the Numenorians following this battle would be killed to the last man, but I guess that was a particularly important orc. So yeah, by virtue of killing off the Mordor general, which makes sense in this kind of battle because it really does light a fire under the reinforcing armies to try and support Mordor quickly, but given that that's the case, the decisions of both teams are even stranger than I first thought. Because there wasn't a huge amount of urgency from either side to play to the objective, if that's true. But, you know, it is what it is, I suppose. I mean, in terms of the actual battle overall, of course, the forces of evil, on this occasion, or at least eviler in the Mordor and their underlings, would have gone on to win. But in terms of the objective, I guess Numenor have won. Strange. But the Numenorians, we can see what they did. Axgard of Armenelos doing very well for themselves, 303 kills, but then the opposite, or the inverse of that, with one of them only getting 18 kills. Good returns, as you would expect. I mean, a lot of these Numenor units are of good quality. They started off in a position of power over Rhun, and then later on they were one of the healthier armies, so they could carry that through into the late game. So it's not a huge surprise to see many of their units getting into that necessary 3-figure level, in some cases getting over that. The Trebuchet, of course, early on against Rhun was dominating, so 577 is an excellent return. It's not really as simple as saying, you know, usually attackers that get that many kills with an artillery piece would have walked over their opposition, but this, of course, was a very unique kind of battle in the sense that both sides had to do their share of attacking and defending. I wasn't even aware, actually, that there was the objective to play to. This is a fairly... I've had these replays for quite a while now. I've been kind of dragging my feet because of various factors that have made me unable to record, so I'm certain that they would have actually explained the rules to me. when they gave me these replays. But still, there we have it. Big thank you to Colonel Speaks 46 for making this scenario and allowing me to show it. Big thank you to the Flame of Arnor for sending this one in. Otherwise, I would have completely missed it. Always nice to see new content and new maps and that sort of thing, and an interesting kind of setup for a custom scenario as well, which is always nice, because on regular battles you can't really set this up because it's very dependent on deployment zones, and obviously when it comes to general sniping like that, you have to have that in custom battles such as this. So we'll see if more of these are forthcoming in the future. Like I said, I've got a bit of a backlog at this point, so I will be trying my best to catch up and make my way through that as best as I am able, alongside the ongoing faction overview series, which is still going to be maybe 4 months or so worth of videos there because of the amount of factions in the game, and we'll see where we stand after that. So yeah, big thank you to all the players involved in this one. Hope you enjoyed this, and hope you'll join me for whatever is next.